In this video, we're going to see how we can start making some enemy controllers for our enemies. We're going to be using an AI script that will allow us to tweak different behaviors so we can create many different types of enemies. And we're just going to use the same enemy template prefab to quickly, produce multiple unique enemy types. So why don't we get into Unity and see how we can start doing this. So let's go into Unity, and I'm going to assume that you already have your project open. I've shown us several times how we can open up our Unity project. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate to my ship's model scene. I have a few examples over here. I'm going to open up whatever scene your base fighter model is in. And you can see I have a nice little enemy fighter model right here. Next, we're going to go to my assets, prefabs folder, ships, and I'm going to drag in enemy fighter into my hierarchy. Next, I'm going to expand enemy fighter, and the next few steps are going to be very similar to how you made your player character. I'm going to expand until I see the game object ship model. I'm going to drag and drop my enemy fighter model onto ship model right there. All right, great. Next, I'm going to position my shot spawns. Remember, we want to keep our shot spawns not, to the left or the right of the enemy. We want to keep them right down the center of our enemy. And we can do this easily but you'll see something interesting with our shot spawns here. Our shot spawns are facing away from the other direction as my fighter. So what we got here is we have some issues with which way our different game objects are pointing. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back and recheck all the different rotations of every single little group up here in my hierarchy. And I want to make sure every single one of them says 0. So I'm going to zerofy my enemy fighter so it says 0. I'm going to just walk down the line and make sure that all my values in the Y rotation up here are set to 0. And we can see the issue right here on example enemy fighter model. This was the model that I was first creating my enemy type ship with. You can see that my Y rotation is at 180. So I'm going to just zerofy that. And now you can see that my shot spawns are facing the same way as my ship. And that was because I had my model rotated 180 degrees in the wrong direction. So just go through and check all your different game objects here and make sure they're all rotated at 0. So after I got my ship rotated the right way, now I can go ahead and start placing my primary and secondary shots. And since this enemy is pretty simple, my primary and secondary shots are probably going to be right on top of each other. I want to click the perspective word right here and go into isometric view. And then click on the X axis right here in my view cube. And that'll give me a perfect side view of my ship. So I can position it right there where those guns are. And I want to click on this right here and drop us back into perspective mode so I can start rotating my camera all around. Next, I'm going to add some engine effects to my ship. And we're going to do that largely the same way as we did with my player by creating a new empty game object. We're going to reset the values up here in the inspector. We're going to call this empty game object engines with a capital E. I'm going to place engines under enemy fighter ship. And now I'm going to go digging in my VFX folder in assets, VFX, and engine enemy. I'm going to drag and drop my engine right there. And we see that our engine's facing the wrong way. So we need to tweak a value here to make sure our engine's facing the right way. So to get our engine flowing the right way, all we have to do is just kind of tweak our start speed in our particle system component. So with engine enemy selected, I have my particle system component. I'm going to zoom in here, and I'm going to go to start speed, and I'm going to make that say -50. Now our speed is reversed, and we're starting to get the engines flying in the right way. Now I'm just going to place this guy like so. Duplicate it over, and boom. Now we have engines for my enemy under my engines group. Alright, so now that I got all my different game objects organized and created correctly, I'm just going to collapse enemy fighter. So all I see is enemy fighter in my hierarchy, and I'm going to add a capsule collider to the ship so we can start looking for collision detection. So I'm going to go to add component with my enemy fighter selected, add component, physics, and capsule collider. I'm going to expand capsule collider, check is trigger, set my direction to the z-axis, and now I'm going to tweak my capsule collider so it encompasses most of the ship here. Maybe make the radius a little bit bigger. Maybe give it a little bit bigger hitbox down below, because we see the wings right there. We don't want the player to think that they're hitting the wings and things are just passing by. So we'll give this a little bit more of a lenient hitbox, like so, right there. Alright, great. So our capsule collider is created. I'm just going to collapse my capsule collider. Next, I'm going to go to add component, physics, rigid body, and I'm going to turn use gravity to off. And now I can collapse my rigid body. And now we're just going to add 4 custom scripts that I created. So we're going to add my collision behavior. So we'll go to add component, scripts, collision behavior. We're going to go to add component again. This time go to scripts and add my fire script. And why don't we go ahead and link these variables? Might as well just go ahead and knock those out. So I'm going to grab my primary weapon, put it on primary weapon. With my enemy fighter still expanded, grab my secondary weapon, place it on the secondary weapon variable. And now I'm going to expand my enemy fighter ship, take my primary shot spawn, and you guessed it, secondary shot spawn, boom. And now my fire script is all assigned and it's ready to go. Next, I'm going to add my stats script so I can give this game object some stats. And while I'm at it, I'm going to go ahead and tweak or assign my explosion. Let's give it an explosion B, I guess. And I'll leave these stats at their default for right now. I can always come back and tweak them whenever. And the last component we're going to add is an enemy AI script. Since this is not a player, we won't be adding a player mover. Instead, we're going to go to add component, scripts, and then enemy AI. And we have a few things to assign here. Why don't we go ahead and assign my enemy fighter ship game object right here. I'm going to go ahead and collapse that. Select my enemy fighter, roll back real quick so I can see my script. Drag and drop enemy fighter like so. Open this up. Drag and drop my engines. And since this is not a turret, I don't need to add a turret weapon right here. So this is a really good strong start. What we gotta do now is save my enemy fighter as a prefab. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna call this enemy standard, I guess. And I'm gonna navigate to assets, prefabs, and there's my player prefab that we created earlier. I'm just gonna grab my enemy standard and drag and drop it, making this enemy a prefab, thusly saving it. So we can drag my enemy standard into any scene that we want. Okay, great. So with my first enemy prefab created, I'm going to go ahead and see if I can incorporate it into a scene with my player ship. I guess I'll go ahead and save this scene. And then I'm going to go and open up scenes, and I'm going to go to my scenes folder, and let me bring up my start scene that had my player and my kind of my boundaries in my game. And if we hit play, you can see that whatever player I have selected, these are his weapons. So I'm able to test enemies here. Next, I'm going to grab that enemy standard prefab and just drag and drop it in my scene here. You'll notice that my enemy prefab is zeroed out. Beforehand, I had moved my player from 0 in the z-axis. I moved him back a little bit so we can give my enemy some room to breathe, like so. There we go. That's my game view. I can bring him back just a little bit. Perfect. All right. So what I'm going to do now is, I guess, play around with enemy standard and tweak it to where I get the kind of weapons and behavior that I want. All right. I want this enemy to kind of just fly from the right side of the screen to the left side of the screen, just simply shooting forward at a decent speed. So what we're going to do is we're going to tweak some of these stats up here. All right. Let's look at my stats first. So I'm going to give this enemy 50 health. Current health when starting out will be 50. That seems fine. All this recharge stuff seems fine right now. And you'll notice that we have some tool tips to help us out. And I'm going to make this ship a little bit slower, like so. Now I want to go down to my enemy AI script. And since I'm testing this enemy in a test scene, we're going to go ahead and check test enemy to yes. We're not attacking from behind. So whenever you leave this unchecked, it'll automatically flip the ship for us and make sure we're flying towards the player in our scene. I don't really need to change any zigzag values. We're not going to be seeking the player. Enemy lifetime, that might be useful if you want to make sure you're not clogging up your scene with enemies that never die. So I guess I'll kill it after 15 seconds. That should be plenty of time for this ship to fly across the screen. All right. And here's an interesting variable, the primary fire frequency range. Basically, if we add values to this right here, we'll be able to kind of randomize the frequency of how many times our ship shoots at us. So what we'll do is we'll add a very low number like 0.5 seconds, and we'll add 2 seconds. So every time our ship fires, the next shot will take place between 0.5 seconds later or 2 seconds later, and every number in between those two. It's just a nice way to add some randomness to our ships, so it's not every playthrough is just a little bit different. So you can memorize all your positions. And why don't we test this to see how it works? All right, let's hit play. And immediately you see the ship flying forward. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to bring back my enemy asset just a little bit. I'm just kind of hopping between my scene view and game view. That way I can see my ship. And that was a little fast for me, so I'm going to hit 100 on the speed right there. Hit play. And there we go. You can see that sometimes it's shooting faster than others. Let's change that a little bit. Let's make it shoot a little bit slower. So I'm going to increase these values. So we'll either shoot 1 second later or up to 5 seconds later now. And there we go. Great. Let's make this really random. You can see the distance between the bullets right here. Very nice. Alright, so I have a standard enemy already made. Let me show you what happens whenever we take our enemy standard in our scene view right here, and I place the character behind our player. Let's move our player up a little bit. But this time I'm going to select my enemy standard. I'm going to check attack from behind. Notice how we fly from the left to the right now. It'll be very important to keep note of that as you're placing enemies in your level. This attack from behind will be the difference between enemies spawning in front of you or behind you. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and uncheck that. This is what we do. And might as well go ahead and uncheck enemy tests. And I'm going to go ahead and hit apply for this enemy standard. And now we have a prefab with enemy standard that's been tested and known to work. So now that I have a standard enemy working quite nicely for us, I'm going to go ahead and take this standard enemy prefab and make it into kind of an enemy template. That way I can use all of these scripts and behaviors over and over again without having to rebuild an enemy controller for every single enemy type. So how can we do that? Well, I'll just keep it within this scene. And in fact, let me unpause this. In fact, if you had already deleted your enemy, we can just take our enemy standard from below and just drag and drop it right there for us. And really all we have to do with this enemy standard is rename him to enemy template, like so. I want to go in and expand ship model. I'm not going to delete ship model, although I guess I could. But I will delete the enemy model below that you created in that scene. We need to go ahead and just get this model out of here. That way we can bring in any other kind of, ship model we want, like a boss or any kind of turret that you might have made. All right, so now with enemy template kind of made, with my ship model taken care of, we're going to go ahead and drag and drop enemy template down into prefabs. And notice how enemy template, the preview, is basically like our primary and secondary shot arrows. Meanwhile, our enemy standard is just the way we left it from the last part of the video. So why don't we have a little bit of fun with this new enemy template that we've made. I'm going to zoom in here, and my player is right here. Why don't I bring back my player? We'll take him into the negative 300 Z. And I want to take my enemy template. Again, if enemy template's not in your hierarchy, we just drag and drop him down here to the prefabs. We can just take enemy template and bring him back into our scene up here. All right, why don't we push him to the 0? I'm going to go ahead and hit apply so he's all zeroed out. And our enemy template's ready to be made into whatever we need it to be. All right, why don't we go ahead and try to make a dogfighting type enemy. But you'll notice that I don't really have a model for my dogfighter. I guess we shouldn't use enemy template right now. Why don't we just tweak our original enemy standard fighter? He's the one that has the nice model on him. We can just change the behavior of this model for this enemy quite easily. I'm going to go ahead and zero out my enemy standard real quickly and apply my prefab to it. All right, great. So to make a dogfighting enemy, I'll pull him out a little bit. Actually, you know what? I want to call this enemy dogfighter. And I'm going to drag and drop enemy dogfighter into my prefabs. And now I have enemy standard and enemy dogfighter. And really all I have to do to get my dogfighter working is to go to my enemy AI. We're going to tweak a few things. We're going to go to seek player, yes. We're going to go to seek aggression and set that to 1. And seeking pullout will be how close to the player will the enemy U-turn away from the player. So it's going in, shooting. Then it pulls out so it can turn around and go for another attack run. So why don't we just make that 1. And seek and go in. This will be the distance from the player after that U-turn that it will turn back towards the player for that extra next run. I'm going to make that 2 for right now. Alright, so with these basic values set, I'm going to go ahead and pull my enemy right there. We can see how our enemy behaves now. Oh, not working. I forgot to check test enemy. There we go. So we see we have a ship. Oh, that's crazy. It looks like our ship is flying in the Y and the Z axis. So it looks like we need to tweak or constrain my ship within a certain axis. And to make sure that our ship's not going off the X axis, I'm going to select my enemy dogfighter. I'm going to expand my rigid body. And you see where it has constraints at the bottom here? I'm going to expand it. And I'm going to freeze the position in the X. So this will guarantee that my ship, enemy ship, won't leave the X plane right here in the middle of the grid here. And why don't we see this in action? So we got my ship flying here. And now we can see my ship kind of changing its direction and running into my player. Great. I'm still not happy with the behavior of my dogfighter, so I'm going to go in and increase his speed to 200. I'm going to make him aggressively seek the player at 1.5. I want him to fly away 3 units. I want him to pull out at 2. Let's see what happens now. Went straight into me. So it looks like these small values for my seeking aren't working very well. So I'm going to change my aggression to somewhere like 3. I'm going to change my pull out to something like 20, and I go into 40. Because remember, these are probably units away. So, my ship was getting within, 1 unit away, and then that's going to definitely cause collision and weird stuff to go on. I'm going to set these a little bit higher and see what happens. So we see that my ship has left me. And we kind of get this nice little cat and mouse thing going on. I'm going to change my seeking aggression to 5. Let's do 20 on the pull out. And the go back in will be 30. It's just about tweaking the values until you find something that feels right for you. So basically what we get is a behavior where my ship will seek my player until it gets a certain amount of close, and then he'll keep going. Let's turn off the lifetime of this dogfighter as well. So I'm going to go to my enemy AI, and we're going to change this lifetime to something like 60 seconds, just to make sure we can play around with him. So the enemy gets close, he gets within 20 units of my player right here, and he stops seeking. He kind of just goes straight ahead, and then when he gets 30 units away, he turns back in towards the player for another run. We gotta get this character that we can kind of dogfight with a little bit. It's a pretty fun little tool. So this will be for some more of your more intense enemies in the game. I mean, you can maybe make the boss behave like this for all I know. That'd be a tough boss fight. Alright, we've made our dogfighting an enemy pretty easily out of our standard enemy. Why don't we see how we can use our enemy template in some of the older scenes we have made with our enemy types to make some brand new enemies. So I'm going to go ahead and select my enemy dogfighter for my last part. I'm going to hit apply to save the prefab and just delete him. And we'll save our scene and our start scene. And now why don't we open up a scene? I got one saved right here. I'm going to open up the scene with my enemy turret model that I've constructed a few days ago. And here we go. There is my enemy turret. You can see that, it's nothing too special. It's just that there's a nice little gun at the top that can rotate and track the player with me. Alright, so what we need to do is we need to create a character controller just for my turret. And now we can use Prefab's enemy template. I'm going to drag enemy template into my scene. And now I have a few things to do with my enemy template. I think the first thing I'm going to do is expand all the way to engines, and we're going to delete engines out of my turret. I don't want any kind of engines on it. It's a stationary thing. The next thing I'm going to do is drag and drop enemy turret onto ship model, like so. And with my enemy template selected, I'm going to go ahead and call this enemy turret. Great. And I'm going to go to my Capsule Collider dimensions. We can see that this doesn't have a really good, it's not that good. So I'm going to increase the radius, bring it up a little bit, and this looks pretty good to me. So if I hit anything on here, we'll be good. Maybe take down its radius some and the height. Perfect. That'll be better, a little bit better for our player to hit this collider. And next, I'm just going to select my enemy turret prefab that I just renamed and drag and drop it into my prefabs folder and assets, prefabs. Remember where that is. All right. And we're going to move right along here. What we have to do now is create a special group for my enemy turret. What we're trying to do is get a group that contains my weapon cannon so it tracks the player like so, no matter where it is in the scene. Right now I'm just kind of rotating the cannon, so that's not quite the technique we're going to use to do it. But what we got to do now is we're going to create a new empty game object. I'm going to reset its value so it's zeroed out in all these transforms. 1, 1, 1. And we're going to call this turret weapon. Now we have this turret weapon group, and I got to put it somewhere. Well, before I put it anywhere, I need to position my turret weapon right at the base of where my cannon is. This is going to be kind of like the pivot point for my gun. So I'm going to put it right at the base, kind of inside the turret. Right in there, like so. Let me zoom in. Perfect. Now, I'm going to take my primary shot spawn and my secondary shot spawn, and I'm going to position the arrows like so, pointing upwards. Put them right in the tip of my gun here. Great. And with my primary and secondary shot spawn still selected, I'm going to drag and drop them onto this new turret weapon group I made. It'll break the prefab, but that'll be alright. And then I'm going to expand the actual model of my turret right here. So you can see that I'm just in the model group. I'm going to take this weapon cannon, the model we have right here, and I'm going to drag and drop my weapon cannon onto turret weapon. And now I get a group that can rotate my cannon as well as bring my shot spawns with it. And we're going to have a little script that will the cannon will track the position of the player like so. But we're not finished. I want to take my turret weapon and drop it right onto enemy fighter ship. I'll go ahead and collapse these things right here. So under enemy fighter ship, let's see. Yeah, perfect. So under enemy fighter ship, I have my ship model and my turret weapon. All right. And all we got to do next is tweak just a few AI variables. So why don't we do that real quickly? I want to select my enemy turret right up here. You'll notice that everything's selected all as one under my enemy turret. I want to expand it one more time. I'm going to go into my enemy AI script, and I got to check two things right here. First I'm going to do is check turret to be true. Checked, yes. Next, I got to put my turret weapon that we just created right here. So with the turret weapon group selected, I'm going to click and drag it and drop it onto turret weapon. Perfect. Now I feel like my turret is really nice. You can take this time now to tweak its primary and secondary weapons like so. I'm just going to leave it at the standard beam or the standard burst just because for time purposes, we all know how to tweak weapons. I'm going to take my enemy turret, and I think I already have a prefab for it, so all I have to do is select my enemy turret and hit apply. And now you can see my enemy turret's letters lit up blue again, and it should work as intended. Why don't we test this to make sure? So the key here before we leave the scene, you can go ahead and save your turret scene if you'd like. The key here is to hit apply to make sure our prefab is updated with these new variable tweaks that we did right here and right here. So I'm going to open up my start scene with my player ship. We'll save that scene one more time. There's my player. And I'm going to bring in enemy turret. There's my enemy turret. Maybe put it down a little bit low. We're going to make sure that this is a test enemy. So I'm going to select test enemy in my AI script. This will make sure all the actions and behaviors work correctly in this test environment. And we're going to hit play. Alright, did y'all see that, or was it just me? I hit play, and my weapon's not tracking me. It looks like it's almost at a 90-degree angle from my ship. So it looks like we're going to have to tweak this just a little bit. Alright, I think the easiest fix will be just to take my turret weapon and rotate it maybe negative 90 degrees. So it starts off maybe bent like that. Let's see if that fixes it. Nope, not quite. So what could it be? Well, I'm going to expand my turret weapon group up here in my hierarchy. I'm going to select weapon cannon. And we can see that my weapon cannon already has a value of negative 89. So I think that might be what's throwing us off. We have a turret weapon group that's being controlled by a script to point at my player, but yet the actual model is already has a value of 90 degrees. So I'm going to set that to 0. And this is what we get. We get my turret pointing forward. I gotta go ahead and reposition my primary or my shot spawns like so. So basically, moral of the story is double check your actual mesh, your actual cannon mesh, to make sure it's zeroed out as well in our rotation. All right, let's see if this works. Yep, that was the fix. Perfect. And now you can see my turret tracking my player and shooting right at him. Perfect. Alright, what we're going to do next is just select enemy turret, and we'll hit prefab apply. And now I have a 100% working turret for my game. Fantastic. Next, we're going to go ahead and, well, we can just save this scene. We're going to go ahead and open up our boss scene. So I'm going to open up my boss scene. And wherever you saved your boss is where you should be navigating, hopefully in your scenes folder. Enemy boss model. And here is my boss model right here. Now I'm ready to use my enemy template prefab and just drag and drop it in there. And we're going to do all the usual things here. I'm going to expand. Here's my ship model. I'm going to place my boss right under ship model. Let's adjust my shot spawns. So I'll go to the side here. And there we go. I want my ship to shoot right there. Collider dimensions. Why don't we go ahead and name this enemy boss? Perfect. And while I'm at it, I'm going to go into my Capsule Collider and make its radius way bigger and its height way bigger. Because this is a big ship. I want to make sure that it's getting hit fairly for the players that play my game. I'm going to give a somewhat generous Capsule Collider. Awesome. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and take Enemy Boss with it renamed and drag it down to my Prefabs folder. Now I have an Enemy Boss Prefab. Alright, and since I already have my Enemy Boss saved as a Prefab, I can save the scene. And since I have a Prefab of my Enemy Boss now, I can just drag and drop it into my start scene I've been testing enemies in. So I'm going to go ahead and open up Start Scene. Here's my player right there. Let's bring in the boss. There he is right there. Why don't we see what he does? Oh, let's make sure we go to our enemy AI script and click Test Enemy. He's just a behemoth. Why don't we do some things where he can just rotate up and down on the screen? I'm going to give him a speed of 0. I'm going to move him all the way down to the bottom of the screen here. Maybe push him forward. It might be tempting to rotate him 180 degrees. And guess what? That's totally fine. The scripts are set up to where you can rotate them whichever direction you want them to be facing. It could have handled it automatically, but if it just helps you visualize your level easier to go ahead and rotate the complete object right here 180 degrees, that's fine too. So what I want to do is I want to make my boss kind of curve up and down like so. So I'm going to go ahead and tweak these vertical amounts. So I'm going to go to vertical speed and set it to 2. I'm going to set my amount to 200. And horizontal amount, we'll set that to 50 and 1. Just some starting values to see what we can get out of this guy right here. So we kind of get a boss that is groovy. He's kind of going up and down and shooting at us like so. I feel like he can go up further. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my vertical amount up to 300 and see what happens. There we go. And you can see my ball kind of jumping back and forth. This increased my horizontal amount to 100 and decrease its speed to 0.5. Oh, is he going to come back? That's pretty cool. In fact, you might be able even to place your boss right here. And so it'll be up to the player to kind of dodge the boss and fight with him. Like so. Ooh. Oh, I got hit by him. I'm dead. Or was the enemy boss, does he have a lifetime? 15-second lifetime. Let's set it to 0 so he never dies due to life. And that's a pretty cool little thing we can do with the Zig Zag vertical and horizontal values here. So, pretty cool. Makes it a little bit harder to fight. Alright, so now that you've seen how we can make some different enemy types, and why don't I go ahead and click apply on the enemy boss prefab. Now that you've seen how we can create some different enemy types, get in there, create as many different enemies as you can. Enemies that fly up and down, enemies that fly forward at a horizontal zigzag. Like if we took the enemy boss and set its speed to 100, and maybe took away its horizontal speed and all that stuff, and set him back here. this is what we would get. We would just get an enemy that constantly flies forward, and with an enemy this big, it could be a problem. But with smaller enemies, you can create some cool little waves of enemies that spawn and go up and down on us. So just play around with your enemy AI stats. Play around with your primary and secondary weapons right here. I didn't give much look at my different types of weapons for my enemies, but they function just like our players' weapons. Alright, so I hope you create a lot of cool enemies to put inside your level, and next time we'll build that level. Thanks.